Hi, Matthew Dix here. I'm going to be doing an analysis, a critique of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's speech in the well of Congress just about a week ago in response to Representative Yoho. I've had a bunch of people ask me to offer my thoughts on it and sort of explain why it's so good. And so that's what I'm going to do here. If you're not familiar with me, I'm a storyteller. I'm also a debater. I was a three-time Connecticut state debate champion. So I'm going to be taking all of the storytelling skills that I have and all of the debate skills I have and bring to bear on this excellent speech and talk about why it works so well. So I'm going to listen to the speech along with you. I'm going to hit play and occasionally I'm going to stop it and talk about some of the things that she's doing to help you better understand why it was so impactful, so powerful, so memorable for so many people. Okay, so here we go.
Madam Speaker, I seek recognition for a question of personal privilege.
The chair has been made aware of the valid base for the gentlewoman's point of personal privilege. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would also like to thank many of my colleagues for the opportunity to not only speak today, but for the many members from both sides of the aisle who have reached out to me in support following an incident earlier this week.
So this is simple. It is not a difficult thing to do, but very smart. She's simply letting people know that she's got support from both sides of the aisle, that she may be standing alone at this lectern, but she is not alone. There would be nothing wrong with her being alone and doing this sort of independently, but she's letting you know that there are people standing behind her, that the words that I'm about to speak are not only serving me, but serving a greater good, a greater community, that people want her here and they support her. It's a great way to start a speech to let people know I have support here. I've got backup. I've got people who care about me and who want me to be here. It's a great way to sort of let people know that you mean business. So a good start.
About 2 days ago, I was walking up the steps of the Capitol when Representative Yoho suddenly turned a corner, and he was accompanied by Representative Roger Williams.
So this is great. She started storytelling, which is a perfect way to start a talk like this or a speech. A story will instantly create a movie in the mind of the audience. It's a way of activating imagination. And that is great to begin your speech with because it draws the listener in. It causes your audience to begin creating a movie in the mind. And that movie that she is creating is going to serve her well when she begins sort of talking about the events that took place. She's first presenting those events, but she's presenting them as a story and as a movie in her minds. The way she does it, she gives us a physical location. The first thing she tells us is where she was. I was on the steps of the Capitol. We all know what those steps look like. We can all picture the Capitol and those columns and the steps that she's climbing. It instantly causes us to see something in our mind's eye. And then she presents the characters that are going to play a role in the story. Herself and Representative Yoho and Representative Roger Williams. Those are our three principal characters that are going to take place in this story. And it's perfect. It's a great beginning to a story, and a story is a great beginning to a speech. It's ideal. She's grabbed my attention by letting me know I'm about to see something that I need to see.
And accosted me on the steps right here in front of our nation's Capitol. I was minding my own business, walking up the steps, and Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous.
So I'm going to quibble a tiny bit. She's doing a great job. It's really fantastic storytelling. I've got one little quibble, one change I would make if we were talking. She opened up this section by saying, he accosted me. And then she began to talk about what that looked like. In storytelling, what we want to do is avoid sentences like that. I call them thesis statements. So she presents a thesis statement. Representative Yoho accosted me. That's her thesis statement. Below that thesis statement comes the supporting detail. She describes where she was moving, and what he said. The problem with a thesis statement is it sort of strips the story of any suspense or surprise. Now, in this case, most people knew already what had happened on the steps of the Capitol, but the greater population of America didn't. And so I would suggest taking that sentence out, the one that says he accosted me, because we, as storytellers, we want our audience to experience the events that we experienced in the same way, almost second by second. So it would have been slightly more powerful for her to have said, I was going up the steps when Representative Yoho approached me and stuck his finger in my face and told me I was disgusting. Allow us to experience it in the way you experience it, which is surprising, shocking, unbelievable. Avoid saying he accosted me because it sort of preps us for everything that is to come and it strips us a little bit of that shock and surprise. But otherwise, again, it's great storytelling. It's an excellent characterization of the disgusting terms that Representative Yoho used on those steps that day. And the way she speaks those sentences, the way she describes those words that he said, slow and poignant, allowing each one to land with us. It's great. It's really fantastic.
And then he took a few more steps. And after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead and I walked inside and cast my vote because my constituents send me here each and every day to fight for them and to make sure that they are able to keep a roof over their head, that they're able to feed their families, and that they're able to carry their lives with dignity.
Brilliant. Brilliant in so many ways. Brilliant because she's piled on more people to support her constituents. The people of her district want her to come to the Capitol every day. And this man stood in front of her and stopped her from doing her job because he needed to say disgusting things. It's her opportunity to line up every one of her constituents behind her in support. But she also does that beautiful thing where she talks about why she's here at the Capitol. She's here to fight for her constituents. And this is a fight that we're talking about. And the list is great. It's a roof over the head, it's food on the table, and then live your lives with dignity, which is exactly what Representative Yoho is not allowing to take place here. A congresswoman should be able to mount the steps of a Capitol, go inside and cast her vote and leave without being accosted, without having a finger put in her face, without that disgusting name calling happening. So not only does she use those phrases to get her constituents sort of metaphorically standing behind her, but she uses that list to reference right back to why we're here in the first place. I am standing here because someone did not allow me to do my job and live my life with dignity. And it is what she's fighting for her constituents and now what she's fighting for herself. It's really, really well done.
I walked back out and there were reporters in the front of the Capitol.
So she's back out in the front of the Capitol and she's redefining her space. Again, setting up her physical location. It's the same physical location, but it's changed a little bit, which is important. There are reporters here now. The reporter's actually going to overhear the next comment, and that's going to really bring this whole story to a head. But she's redefined her physical location. She's allowed us to adjust the movie playing in our mind just a little bit.
And in front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, "a fucking bitch." These are the words that Representative Yoho levied against a congresswoman.
Great. It's not words levied against AOC, although it is, or they were, right? These are not words levied against one woman. She has decided that I'm going to pass on the attempt to make this a personal attack. I am going to take this thing that he has done and I'm going to point out, I am going to reframe it, if you will. She is reframing this as not only an attack on her, but an attack on every congresswoman who has ever entered the Capitol before. It's a legitimate argument to make, and it's a smart one because she has turned his words into not only a singular action against one person, but an action against an enormous group of people. It's a reframing of the argument that she's doing that is a legitimate reframing and a really smart reframing.
The congresswoman that not only represents New York's 14th congressional district, but every congresswoman and every woman in this country.
So can you see her reframing it again? Now it's an attack not only on congresswomen, but on the people of the 14th district, on congresswomen who have ever served and women all over the country. Again, she's transferring this personal attack into a much broader attack on a larger group of people. It's legitimately true. This is a man who accosted a congresswoman on the steps of the Capitol. And it is an attack against this woman, but it is an attack against all people who deserve to live their lives with dignity. and she's expanding the group slowly as she goes through the talk, which is just brilliant. She's bringing people into the tent. She's bringing those people into the tent, the people who should feel as offended as she did that day.
Because all of us have had to deal with this in some form, some way, some shape, at some point in our lives.
There's some anger in that. Did you hear it? There was some legitimate anger in what she was saying. That transition, the vocal transition that she makes, the way that those words come out sharp, the P actually pops. It's the only time in this speech that she's going to have a P pop, and it's because she's so angry. Now, I don't think she's really angry. I think that she is, I think there's anger in her, but I think she is clever. I think she is speaking wisely. I think she's speaking cleverly. I think she's speaking expertly. I think she's harnessing the anger she has in this moment and firing out these sentences like spears, and it's the perfect place to do it.
And I want to be clear that Representative Yoho's comments were not deeply hurtful or piercing to me, because I have worked a working class job.
So before she gets into this part, which is one of my favorite parts, did you see her recharacterize again or reframe? She's reminding you this is not a personal attack, because actually that guy, that stupid man, he didn't hurt me. I am not personally harmed. I'm not standing here today because his words mattered personally to me. She is expressing strength. She is expressing sort of an inability to be harmed by the words of a stupid man. She is indicating the armor that she wears every day. She is again reminding us that she's not here because it's a personal attack. She is here because this is an attack on a large group of people. That the words that he spoke to her go a lot further than her. In fact, they didn't even bother me. I mean, that is just, it's great. But this next part I really love.
I have waited tables in restaurants. I have ridden the subway. I have walked the streets in New York City. And this kind of language is not new.
Did you see what she did there? Representative Yoho is a congressman, right? He works in the Capitol. He has constituents too. He's an elected official. But she just put him as a common foul-mouthed subway rider, as the kind of guy who she had to throw out of bars at the end of the night. She is reframing him now. She's not calling him names like he did. She is subtly reframing him and saying, basically, you're no better than the drunken jackasses who I used to throw out of bars at midnight. You're no better than the idiots who catcall me as I walk down the streets of New York. You're no better than the fool on the subway who thinks he owns the world but really owns nothing. She is putting him in his place in a way that is clever, that is subtle, and is befitting of this space. This is the well of the Capitol. This is Congress. This is not a place for name calling, so she is subtle about it. It's really brilliant.
I have encountered words uttered by Mr. Yoho and men uttering the same words as Mr. Yoho while I was being harassed in restaurants. I have tossed men out of bars that have used language like Mr. Yoho's.
He's no better than any of those men. It's great, isn't it? He's no better than any of those losers I've had to deal with before.
And I have encountered this type of harassment riding the subway in New York City.
The other thing she's doing here is she's deeply connecting, I suspect, with women. I am a man and I have not experienced this same type of harassment. I hear it secondhand. I have heard it firsthand. I've actually, on several times, come to the defense of a woman who is being mistreated by some idiot guy. So I can't really relate completely. I'm not going to pretend that I understand what it's like to be harassed by men on a regular basis, like I'm sure AOC and many, many women are, but she's connecting to those women. The things that she is saying is resounding, resonating. It is resonating with women. I know it is. And that's her purpose here. She's letting people know that this is what women have to deal with every day. And I'm quite sure that if you are a woman You are nodding at this point. You are thinking, yes, that's right. I've had to deal with this too. This is ridiculous.
This is not new. And that is the problem. Mr. Yoho was not alone. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Representative Roger Williams.
What a great point, right? This wasn't even a one against one encounter, right? There was a bystander here. It was a man. A man watched this happen. That is what she's about to tell us. A man was standing there watching this happen. He could have done something, and instead he stood by. And the phrase silence is violence, that's exactly what's happening here, and that's what she's saying. She's saying it was a 2 against 1 situation. One of them could have done the right thing, and neither one of them did.
And that's when we start to see that this issue is not about one incident. It is cultural. It is a culture of lack of impunity, of accepting of violence and violent language against women, and an entire structure of power that supports that.
So once again, she's reframing this argument. She has taken an encounter that she had on the steps of the Capitol with one man and a bystander, an adjacent man, and she has now continued to broaden it so that it moved beyond congresswomen everywhere and it moved beyond women everywhere. We are now in a cultural acceptance of violence against women with words. And that is a huge thing that she has slowly expanded. She has decided it's not going to be about me, which is smart, right? This is not about my personal feelings. She's made this clear. She's expanded it to the entire cultural realm. And we believe it. We buy it because she's taken us step by step. She didn't go from her to culture. She slowly built this frame so that it's enormous now. Really smart.
Because not only have I been spoken to disrespectfully, particularly by members of the Republican Party and elected officials in the Republican Party.
So now she's getting a little partisan, which is totally appropriate. She's about to give us some specific examples of Republicans who have spoken in disgusting ways with her. She's letting us know that this is not an isolated incident. This is not idiot Yoho and his idiot pal. This is a group of people, a group of men who have spoken about me in disgusting, derisive, and violent ways ever since I arrived in this Capitol.
Not just here, but the President of the United States last year told me to go home to another country with the implication that I don't even belong in America. The governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, before I even was sworn in, called me a whatever that is. Dehumanizing language is not new.
There's a bunch of things happening here. The first thing is she's just hammering Yoho in a brilliant way. She is hammering him by making him as common and ordinary and insignificant as possible. She continues to indicate that he's nothing special. You're just another jerk guy acting like a jerk. And that, I know, has to kill Yoho, because she is taking a man who thinks quite highly of himself, a U.S. congressman, and she's basically saying, you're no better than the most disgusting man on the subway who leers at women and says awful things. And she continues to hammer away at this. Now look at the two targets she chose in the Republican Party too. Trump and DeSantis, right? Right now, in America, I'm hard pressed to think of two more Republicans under more fire right now than Trump and DeSantis, both for the handling of the coronavirus, both doing miserably. Now, Trump, for a million reasons, is under a microscope, and justifiably so. But right now, DeSantis, a man who said, we opened and nothing happened, and now Florida is a hot spot. Did she choose those two people because those were the only two examples she had? I don't think so. I think she chose them carefully. I think she chose the two people who are under the most scrutiny and the most fire in America today, the two people who seem to have blundered the greatest. Those are her two examples. I think it's a great choice of examples.
And what we are seeing is that incidents like these are happening in a pattern. This is a pattern of an attitude towards women and dehumanization of others.
So it's a pattern of dehumanization against women and others, right? expanding that frame, continually bringing people in. It started with her, one person, and she's now expanded it actually beyond women. She's used the word others now. So she's implying that this is dehumanization against many people, not only women. She's really laid an enormous crime on the shoulders of Yoho, and appropriately so. The one thing I do have to ask, why does she say pattern like that? I cannot figure this out. Pattern, pattern. It might just be a word she has a hard time with. We have those words all the time. I have a hard time with the word error. I grew up in Boston. It's got a lot of R's in it. I trip on it all the time. So when I say error, I know I say it a little odd, but I am always a little distracted when I listen to this speech by the way she says pattern. I'm wondering why. Maybe it's just one of those hard words for her, like we all have.
So while I was not deeply hurt or offended by little comments that are made.
Little comments. How great is that? What she really said is little men. She can't say little men. She's going to, when they go low, we go high. That's what she's doing here. Yoho on the steps of the Capitol, he went low. She has brought it inside and she's staying high. She's not name calling, but little comments. That's great. She's just saying he's a little man.
When I was reflecting on this, I honestly thought that I was just going to pack it up and go home. It's just another day, right? But then yesterday, Representative Yoho decided to come to the floor of the House of Representatives and make excuses for his behavior. And that I could not let go.
Isn't this great? So she's pointing out that the stupid words he said on the Capitol steps mean nothing to her, but it's the pathetic excuses he attempted to make, the pathetic defense that he attempted, the way that he tried to mitigate his behavior. This is why I am here today. And that's great. This is not, again, a personal attack. Throughout this entire speech, AOC makes it clear, I'm not here because I'm personally hurt, because I'm too tough to let that stand in my way, right? She said I was going to pack it up and go home, just chalk it up for another day with another jerk, right? Another guy in the subway, another guy in the streets of New York, another guy at the bar at midnight. That's all Yoho is. But then he did something that I couldn't stand. He went and he tried to defend himself, and he lied doing it. He tried to mitigate his disgusting behavior with a pathetic apology, which she is about to take down.
I could not allow my nieces, I could not allow the little girls that I go home to, I could not allow victims of verbal abuse and worse to see that excuse, and to see our Congress accept it as legitimate.
So reframing the argument again, she started with nieces and then little girls I go home, and then the victims of abuse. Again, expanding the frame, starting small, getting big, bringing in as many people as possible, and indicating that there's a difference here. The difference is, if we're out on the steps and Yoho says something to me, I don't care. I'm too tough for that. But don't bring your filth into the House of Representatives, into these hallowed halls, and expect to get away with it. She is differentiating the space. In that public space out there, I've dealt with a million of you morons, and I can deal with them. But don't bring it into these chambers. Don't bring that nonsense here, because if you bring it here, I'm going to hit back, and that's what she's doing now.
And accept it as an apology, and to accept silence as a form of acceptance. I could not allow that to stand, which is why I'm rising today to raise this point of personal privilege.
So she's letting everyone know, and this is a really good thing to keep in mind for the rest of your life. She's making a great point. If someone offers you a terrible apology, a non-apology, which is what you're about to find out that Yoho did. If someone offers you a non-apology and you don't say anything, that's equivalent to accepting the apology. She is letting you know that you cannot afford to stay silent when someone tries to make excuses and offers you this non-apology nonsense. That is what brings her here today. Again, it's that contrast that she's working, which is great in speeches and storytelling. She's separated the private space versus the public space versus here in Congress, right? Those two places are different. That's why I'm here today. And she's also separated the idea of, if you make an apology, but it's a non-apology, I'm not going to stay silent. That implies acceptance, and I'm not going to do that. So that is what brings her here today. She's explicitly clear. She has made it her mission almost in this speech to not allow what Yoho did on the steps of the Capitol to appear as if she's hurt personally, or that her personal harm has brought her here today. That is completely irrelevant to why she is speaking. She is speaking for a multitude of reasons, but the last reason, the non-reason, is that she was personally hurt, because a little man with little words cannot hurt her. I love it.
And I do not need Representative Yoho to apologize to me.
Isn't that great? She sealed him off right there. This is a term I used to use in debating, which is you anticipate what your opponent is going to say and you seal them off from doing it. So here she is saying, don't apologize to me. Don't try to apologize to me again. Don't think that a new apology is going to change things. I don't even want it, right? She's sealing it off and preventing him from returning and trying to fix this mess that he's created. It's great. It is a great debate tactic. It is the anticipation of what your opponent is going to say and then stopping them from saying it before they ever open their mouths.
Clearly, he does not want to.
Reframing. This is just reframing right here. We don't know really how Yoho feels, but we do. She is saying, clearly he does not want to apologize to me. Now, at this point, he would love to say, I do want to apologize to you. Maybe he does. I don't know. He's probably an indecent human being and he doesn't want to. But she's placing words in his head. And that's great. That is reframing the argument. That is forcing him to assume a position that he is uncomfortable with, but it is probably accurate. Even if it's not accurate, it's believable. She is forcing a position upon him and he can't do anything about it.
Clearly, when given the opportunity, he will not. And I will not stay up late at night waiting for an apology from a man who has no remorse over calling women and using abusive language towards women.
Just a reminder, sort of like a little reminder, why are we here? Why don't I want his apology? Because he's a man who abuses women verbally. That is what she has reduced him to. She has taken this congressman and without calling him a single name, she has reduced him to a low-life scumbag who abuses women verbally. No better than the men she used to throw out of bars at night. It's brilliant.
But what I do have issue with is using women, our wives and daughters, as shields and excuses for poor behavior.
She's taking on his argument here. He basically made the argument that I'm not an abusive guy. I don't verbally abuse women because I'm married and have a daughter, which is a common nonsense excuse made by men who say terrible things to women and then imply that they could never do such a thing or never have hate or vitriol or prejudice in their hearts because they have a mom too, which is all nonsense, and she's about to take it all down. But again, she's framing that argument first. She's letting us know what he feels. She's assuming what he feels, and then she's about to take down the argument.
Mr. Yoho mentioned that he has a wife and 2 daughters. I am 2 years younger than Mr. Yoho's youngest daughter.
It's my favorite thing. Isn't that great? I'm 2 years younger than Mr. Yoho's daughter, right? So he went after a woman on the steps of the Capitol, a congresswoman who's 2 years younger than his daughter, and he tried to use his daughters as a shield. Also, it's a slight dig on Yoho's age. Not only are you a low-life scumbag who verbally assaults women, but you're an old man too, right? That this young, powerful woman of color, this woman who terrifies Republicans because she does not back down, because she has taken on her role as a legislator and uses social media brilliantly and puts them in their place and is fantastic. Just watch her question witnesses when there are hearings. She is brilliant. She's terrified those men. And what she's doing here is just so fantastic. It's exactly what needs to be said. It's a beautiful moment in a story when it's sort of like the other shoe drops. He used his wife and his daughters as a defense, I'm 2 years younger than one of those daughters.
I am someone's daughter, too.
It's great. Oh,
My father, thankfully, is not alive to see how Mr. Yoho treated his daughter.
I mean, she's on a roll now, right? Right? He used his daughter as a shield. I'm someone's daughter, too. And by the way, my father passed away. He's not able to hear the disgusting words that you said. Thank goodness. We've got a woman who has lost her father and has been brought to the point that she's actually grateful on this day, in this moment, that he wasn't around to hear it.
My mother got to see Mr. Yoho's disrespect on the floor of this house towards me on television.
So Yoho used daughters and mothers, and so that's exactly what AOC does. She comes back and she says, you're going to use mothers and daughters. I'm going to use mothers and daughters too, and I'm going to skewer you with them. It's great. Yoho took the path that has been taken many times. Yoho took an ordinary excuse that has been used a billion times by a billion guys before, and AOC has blazed a new path. She has found a new way to take those old weapons and use them against him.
And I am here because I have to show my parents that I am their daughter and that they did not raise me to accept abuse from men. Now, what I am here to say is that this harm that Mr. Yoho tried to levy against me was not just an incident directed at me. But when you do that to any woman, what Mr. Yoho did was give permission to other men to do that to his daughters. In using that language in front of the press, he gave permission to use that language against his wife, his daughters, women in his community. And I am here to stand up to say that is not acceptable.
Look what she just did. She has now come to the defense of Yoho's wife and daughter. It's unbelievable. It's a great point. If you use that language against a woman, you are giving other men permission to use that language against women. You are an elected official who uses degrading, dehumanizing, and violent language against women. When you do that, you actually give other men permission to do the same thing to your wife and daughters. You are perpetuating this. You think you're protecting your family? You're not. You are giving permission for this to happen. It's unbelievable. She is now defending the people who Yoho used to try to defend himself. It's incredible. She has made Yoho a man who is actually doing damage to his wife and daughters. By using this language, he is simply encouraging others to do the same thing to the women who he loves. That is great. And the fact that he's an elected official on the steps of the Capitol make it even better. The reminder that the press was there was really calculated too, because this was not an isolated incident. He was willing to say these things in public to people who report to the public. He is giving permission to all of America to use this language if theoretically we looked up to him as a congressman, which obviously we do not.
I do not care what your views are. It does not matter how much I disagree or how much it incenses me or how much I feel that people are dehumanizing others. I will not do that myself.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do the thing that Yoho does. I mean, it's just so rhetorically brilliant because she's taken the weapons that Yoho brought to the fight and she's used them against him, and now she's come to the defense of the people he loves because he's not able to defend him. He's not able to defend them himself. Can you see how great this is?
I will not allow people to change and create hatred in our hearts. And so what I believe is that having a daughter does not make a man decent.
I mean, it's perfect, right? I mean, it's obvious, but it's perfect. Yoho tried to imply that by being a married man with daughters, that he was a good guy. And she has now stripped it all apart. Now, let's be clear. you have to sort of have something, you need to have something to bring to the game. AOC had something to bring to the game. She figured something out before she began speaking. She figured out how to use his weapons against him. That is a clever thing. I can't teach you how to do that. That is logical reasoning. That is her sitting down and thinking, how am I going to go after this guy? One of the best ways to go after someone in a situation like this is to find the things that they use often and use them against them. Right now, I'm in the process actually of writing a list of all the things that Joe Biden needs to do in the debates to battle Donald Trump. Donald Trump basically has 6 weapons and he uses them all the time. And if you identify the 6 weapons he has and you use them against him before he has a chance to even use them himself, he is going to be a shivering pile of goo on the debate stage. I promise you. And that's what AOC has done here. She's taken the things that Yoho thought were powerful defenses, weapons that he could use against her attack, right? You can't attack me. I have a wife and daughters. And she has taken the wife and daughters and she's used them against him. She has come to their defense. She has ridden into the battle to save their lives from this disgusting man who is role modeling offensive behavior on the steps of the Capitol in front of the press. It's so good. And that's not teachable. That is logic. That is reasoning. That is intelligence. That is observing carefully how people use language, figuring out exactly how they use language to attack and defend, and then looking for ways to stop that from happening, which is usually take it and turn it around against them. She's doing all of that. You have to have something to bring to the game, and that's what she does. Now, the rhetorical stuff we can definitely talk about, the constant reframing, the building from small to big, right? We start with her, and then we add and add and add until basically everyone's in the tent with her, right? Everyone's within that frame that she's created, sealing off arguments that Yoho might try to make, placing assumptions in his mind, really reframing him, recharacterizing him as the person she needs him to be, equating him to people like the guys she used to throw out of bars without actually saying it, right? By subtly implying it, by using the phrase little words when what she really meant was little man. All of those things are rhetorical things that can be taught, they can be learned, they can be practiced. But ultimately, you have to bring something new to the game. And she's brought something new. She's brought this fascinating thought that when men use their wives and their daughters as a means of defense, what they're really doing is threatening the safety of their wives and daughters by being a role model for disgusting behavior. That is the key. That is what sort of resonates. Why do I keep saying resounds? Resonates the most with us. She's got a lot of rhetorical brilliance in here that I've already mentioned, but you got to have something to bring to the game. And she has something.
Having a wife does not make a decent man. Treating people with dignity and respect makes a decent man. And when a decent man messes up, as we all are bound to do, he tries his best and does apologize.
So she's hammering home the idea that, you know what, Yoho, you made a mistake. Now, it's an egregious, disgusting mistake. It is not a simple error of judgment. It is a purposeful attack verbally against a sitting congresswoman, one of your colleagues. It's disgusting. But she's also pointing out that we all make mistakes. You didn't bother to apologize. You're not a decent man. Remember the beginning of the speech when she said she's here for her constituents so that they can live dignified lives of dignity? Here is where it's coming back, right? She's bringing back the idea of decency, the idea of apologies when you make mistakes. All of that is coming back now.
Not to save face, not to win a vote. He apologizes genuinely to repair and acknowledge the harm done.
Just remember, she told us she's 2 years younger than his youngest daughter, and now she's lecturing him. She is trying to tell this little man what it is like to be a real man. She is explaining to this little man what it takes to be a good, decent man. This woman who is probably less than half his age, right, is now lecturing him in the House of Representatives, and he has to take it. And she's built it to the point that she can do it. If she had opened with a lecture, If she had opened with this attack against Yoho, this really pointed and deliberate attack, it would not have worked. But what she did over the course of this speech, over the course of the last, 9 minutes, is she has built this frame. She's brought people into it. She has recharacterized. She's done all the things that I talked about. So now she has permission to fire away, guns a-blazing.
So that we can all move on. Lastly, what I want to express to Mr. Yoho.
I just want to make this little point because it is important. Lastly is a really great word. When you can signal to your audience that I've reached the end, I'm about to make my final point, it piques their interest. It brings them in a little bit. It's nice to know how far we are into a speech and when it's going to wrap up. An audience likes those signals anyway. They like to know when we're coming home. We're about to land. This thing is about to land. She's got one more point to make. And when someone says, I got one more point to make, I got one more thing to say, you can't help but listen. So lastly is a great word to use. Any of those types of words that signal, I've got one more thing to say. It just causes everyone to want to hear it.
Is gratitude. I want to thank him for showing the world that you can be a powerful man and accost women. You can have daughters and accost women without remorse. You can be married and accost women. You can take photos and project an image to the world of being a family man and accost women without remorse and with a sense of impunity.
It's sarcasm, but she gets to do it now because she's earned it. It's sarcasm, gratitude, right? I mean, it's great. I want to express gratitude to Representative Yoho for showing the world what a scumbag you are and how men with wives and daughters and nice family photos, they can be scumbags too. I mean, if we want to broaden it a little bit and you think about what she's saying, right? Think about the men who she opposes in Washington right now. The men who are standing in the way of what she thinks is right and just. And let's just look at the president, right? Our president, Donald Trump, he's got a wife, former supermodel, right? He's got a family. He's got 2 sons and a daughter who actually work in the White House to some degree. They're there all the time, right? He's got a little son who he seems to not know exists. Presumably he does, right? A family man, right? If she really wants to expand it, and if we want to think about it in our minds, she's trying to let the entire world know, thank you, because there's a lot of terrible men in the world who have really pretty wives and really lovely daughters and make nice family photos and send them out on Christmas cards every year, but they're scumbags. They're capable of standing in front of a sitting congresswoman on the steps of the Capitol and verbally assaulting her while she's trying to do her job. It's complete sarcasm, but it's brilliant and it's working great.
It happens every day in this country. It happened here on the steps of our nation's capital. It happens when individuals who hold the highest office in this land admit to hurting women and using this language against all of us.
Did you hear that? Did you see the shot at Trump right there? When people who hold the highest office in the land admit to hurting women, right back to the Access Hollywood video, right back to Trump's admission of sexual assault against women. This is not only an attack on Yoho. This is an attack on all men who harm women, all men who act with impunity, all men who think that they can say and do whatever they want to women and that no one is going to come back at them. She's letting them all know. She's putting every man like this on alert, on watch. I'm going to come here and I'm going to hold you to account. It's great. So she is subtly attacking Donald Trump through this talk. Yoho is a small target. He's a small fish, right? He's a minnow. But Trump is the one who she really wants to hurt, right? If she had a choice, she'd hurt Trump. And she's taking a shot at Trump here because of all the people who are currently occupying office in Washington, the one who has the greatest or the most egregious record against women is Donald Trump. And that's what she's doing here. She's taking him on. It's great. It's great.
But once again, I thank my colleagues.
And she never had to say his name.
for joining us today. I will reserve the hour of my time, and I will yield to my colleague, Representative Jayapal of Washington. Thank you.
It was great. It was very, very good. It was very smart. She did a lot of really great things. I mean, in terms of some big takeaways that we can look at in terms of that speech, the opening is great because she indicates she's not on her own. She's got an army behind her. The thing that I love the most is how she doesn't allow this to be personal. I love the way that she continually pulls people into her camp. She's continually reframing this singular attack, right? This singular moment on the steps of the Capitol and turning it into a much broader, more meaningful, more culturally significant talk, right? A jerk man said a jerk thing, and she used it. She used it to talk about what happens to women every day. She used this singular attack to attack the president, to go after, someone much bigger and more important than Yoho. She was brilliant in the way that she demeaned Yoho. She put him in his place. She stepped on him. She made him a small, insignificant human being. And she never had to say anything nasty to do it. She never uttered a single derogatory statement in his direction. She didn't call him a name. The only swear in the entire speech was the one that Yoho used. It was really great. I don't know Yoho, thank goodness. But if I had been Yoho and I had heard this speech, I don't know where I would have gone, like in terms of defending myself. And he has been speechless since. And he's suffered ramifications. He's actually been exited from a board of a Christian organization. But if I try to put myself in the position of Yoho and I try to imagine what I would have said in response, I don't think I have anything to say. I think I hope it goes away. And that's a great thing to do. To make a disgusting, vile, insolent, verbally assaulting, acting with impunity man like Yoho, to put him in a place where he has nothing that he can say, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. Before I end this, I want to show you, AOC released her notes for the talk, which are great. Check it out. Here are the notes from her talk. This is what she had in front of her. So I always say, don't memorize your speeches and don't write them out fully, and she clearly doesn't. I love this, right? Describe the incident and lack of apology. I was not offended. I have dealt with men like Mr. Yoho for years, right? And you can see this is systemic, right? She's discovering, wait a minute, this is a systemic thing. I'm going to bring this up. Look at the end, forgiveness, right? Thank you for showing. Thank you for showing. That's all she had to write, and we know where she goes from there, right? I love this up here when she says, Roger Williams. She suddenly remembers, oh, I have to tell them there was another man there, right? I have to let them know. I like up here, she starts right here with exactly what she's going to say to start. Always good to get a good start. It actually begins here and then rolls to here, right? So her notes are great, right? Having a daughter does not make a decent man. Having a wife does not make a decent man. It's not a lot of words for a 10-minute speech, but I mean, she's AOC. The Republicans hate her because she is verbally astute and brilliant and wields logic like a sword. She's great, and look at all that she can do. I mean, just compare what she just did to the mutterings of so many politicians today, the incomplete, bumbling statements of so many politicians today, and this is what she did it with. So I hope this helps. I hope this gives you an idea of some of the things that she was doing. Just having an idea of it doesn't always mean that you can do it, I realize. So I help people with their speeches. Not many of us have to sort of launch attack speeches like this. But like I said, I'm working right now. I'm hoping to get a video in Biden's hands so that he can defang the 6 things that Donald Trump uses in every interview, in every argument, in every fight with a reporter. He basically has these tools that he returns to again and again. And once you identify them and once you take them away and once you fashion them into your own weapon, you become an incredibly rhetorically powerful person. And that's what AOC is. She's great. And her speech was great. And I hope you learned something from this. If you have any questions or you have any feedback, you can send that to me. MatthewDix@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody.